let's get stuck in.
Mm.
All right, so I'm Scott. I'm the one of Ben. Ben, you brought your friends, I can see. We got a good question there from one of Ben's friends.
Okay.
So I'm Scott. I'm the CEO and founder of Terem. We're a product development firm. We build products for the likes of Qantas, MYOB, Class, IAG, and others. We love building tech products. It's all we do. We were on the AFR Fast 100 2 years running. I've been involved personally in about 61 plus major product launches, new versions, releases. Also an amateur sausage maker and love sailing. So that's me.
Have you got a particular flavour sausage that you like?
I made nacho sausages once.
Oh, yeah.
It was really good. It jammed up my entire sausage machine because the cheese started melting while I was grinding. And so it took me longer than it should have taken. Yeah, the per kilo cost was much higher than it should have been. If that makes sense. Most expensive sausages ever made. And I'm going to introduce you to Ben. So Ben is principal design strategist at Atlassian. I'm kind of curious about what that means as well in a way. And Ben's going to take us through design sprints with a bit of a broad aspect to it in terms of level setting, getting everyone on the same page as to what we mean when we say a design sprint, and then getting into the workshop facilitation as well as some really practical lessons that he's learned in running design sprints. I'm super keen to hear it. I'm always up for little tricks and tips that can help anything improve. And we got Ben's an author of some books as well that we've got up in the Prezzo slides there. Ben, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Scott. Hey, thanks very much for having me in. Thanks everyone for joining us in this webinar as well. I really appreciate your time. As Scott said, I'm Principal Design Strategist at Atlassian. What does that indeed mean? It really means I kind of straddle the space between business strategy and what you end up seeing on interfaces. So a lot of it has to do with experience strategy, trying to kind of capture actionable information from research, transforming that into problems, goals, unmet needs, trying to kind of classify that information in ways that whole teams can use, and trying to kind of work out the unique value proposition of various products and services. That's a lot of what I do. And a lot of that involves a lot of facilitation.
Yeah.
In fact, I like to say I very much design with people rather than pixels these days.
Yeah. And it's really the thing that I've found in explaining design sprints to a lot of people is they think immediately that it's about UI design, and it's actually not that. And I often have to explain it's not that at all.
Absolutely.
It's more the design you're talking about, like a design thinking approach, the design-led approach. Yeah,
yeah, it's very much about what is driving what ends up on those screens or on any device. Yeah. And sometimes it's not anything to do with digital. Sometimes it's actually physical product design or some service design as well. Yeah, yeah. Cool. It's a very broad canvas. And as Scott said too, I'm author of Presto Sketching, which I'm very proud of. I'm big into sketching. I'm big into using drawing and visual thinking and visual communication as a whole as a bit of a not so secret weapon, if you like, to help solve business problems and to help frame and reframe a lot of the challenges that come up in the sort of work that we do. That extends well beyond the realm of design sprints and design. Yeah, like I'm really happy to be a thought partner. I tend to say like a thought partner with my boss and with other management and other businesses to try to kind of explain and think things through in ways that words don't always do well. So yeah, I'm kind of into drawing.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's me. Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's get stuck into it.
All right. So this is all about unlocking success in design sprints, how to improve your design workshop facilitation skills. A lot of what I'm going to be digging into here is definitely about design sprints, but I've got some tips and tricks, as Scott mentioned, and some gotchas that really apply to facilitation in general. here's what I want to cover. I do want to touch briefly on what design sprints actually are, what they're great for, what they're not great for, just so we can level set a bit there. Once that's done, we'll get into the meat of what I really want to talk to you about, which is some pro tips to really kind of help set up your design sprint for success and to keep it successful as well. And I've also got some gotchas to look out for. These are mistakes that I have made. I don't want you to make these mistakes, and I hope you find those interesting. Okay, now just to level set, and I'm sure that there's a wide range of experience and skill amongst you watching and listening now. Some may never have been to a design sprint, some may well be regularly running them and teaching and coaching others. That's great. That's really, really cool. But just to level set, I should say design sprints are a 5-day intensive process, and they're all about solving problems using design approaches with a multidisciplinary group. Design approaches is quite broad. That is a broad term. A lot of it has to do with empathizing with the people for whom you are designing, coming at a certain problem from different perspectives, and also flipping it around to think, well, what is so valuable about the thing that I now want to make? And how can I make that desirable? How can I make it useful? Things like that. Now, a great line out of the book called Sprint, funnily enough, is this. They describe design sprints, the authors, Jake Knapp and 2 others, as the greatest hits of business strategy, innovation, behavioral science, and more, packaged into a step-by-step process that any team can use. I mean, who wouldn't want that? It sounds pretty good.
I'll have one of those, yeah.
Yeah. Wrap it up. I'll take 2, right? Now, when I see that, for me, it kind of strikes me as it's like a mixtape. They kind of got the best of both worlds, and they did a bit of a mix of their favorite stuff. And by the way, these sort of techniques have been around a long, long time. Even participatory design, like co-design, that's been around since the 70s. But I think the key thing here is being able to sequence it and put that kind of healthy sense of urgency with a bias to action around it. Just as a refresher, if you're not so familiar or if this is new to you, there are 5 days to a design sprint. The first day, Monday, it's all about mapping the problem. What kind of problem space is a group in a design sprint going to tackle, and for whom? What do those people need? That's what mapping the problem is all about. And then Tuesday is all about getting the pens out and going nuts sketching, being very divergent in ideas. Sketching can be a bit scary to people, but there's lots of evidence around to show how useful it is in expressing our ideas. But I'm very biased there. And it's a lot of fun as well. Wednesday is then about refining and combining all those ideas that the group comes up with and having to decide on one particular concept to take through to prototype on the Thursday, and then to test with real live human customers on the Friday. And at the end of Friday, there tends to be a bit of a debrief time where the group gets together, often with other stakeholders, to say, well, all right, what did we learn? What hypothesis were we testing with that problem we had in mind? Have we got a solution that has legs? So that's the essence of what is going on in a design sprint.
And so just to wrap into a few of the questions that people have asked, one is,
sure.
Do you see differences applying this to a service versus a product versus something else? Or can you use the same, in your view, the same 5 days, the same steps, regardless?
That's a very big question, but I should say, yes, you can apply it to a service. However, because the service by definition tends to cover several different touch points across several different devices or channels, it can get very big and multivariate very quickly. So the short answer, yes, but you have to really scope not only the problem that you're focused on, but what channels that you're going to, are people going to interact through. So if it's got something to do purely with an app and trying to make an insurance claim, great.
Yeah.
If it's purely got to do with a support center and how it's triaging support calls, great. Yeah. So it's a scoping issue.
If you've got something bigger, you might want to break it up into multiple design sprints on different parts of the problem, perhaps.
Nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's something that often goes under the radar. You can chain several design sprints together. You're right. You can grab a big P problem, if you like, and cut it up into several little P problems, and each problem becomes its own space that goes into a separate sprint. And so that way there's multiple learning.
There's one here. How many design sprints does a team have for a release or a feature?
Oh, that is a good one. It's really important to point out design sprints are very, very different to development sprints. And I've got something to show you a little bit later on that really sort of shows that distinction. Design sprints, I'll say right now, you can think of as being more exploratory. Often, pretty much always at the end of a design sprint, it's not like you then have everything you need to then go into code. You still have to do your regular cadence of design and all that output and thinking. It's really just the more generative exploratory work. That's what design sprints are for.
It's going to help you give an idea of where you might head with a solution.
Absolutely.
Maybe knock down some barriers so that you can go and make the call to invest, 3 months of your engineering team's time to build something, right?
Well said. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as we'll get into, it really is all about that. Trying to kind of give the business confidence about where to invest.
It's something that I've seen in the practical application of design sprints as well, is that you can break it up a bit. I'm just thinking because there's some questions around the how you might test things, and I've seen you may need to break out the test and learn day a little bit because it might take you time. Google created the design sprint, but they did it where they can kind of release a feature and test it within minutes across thousands of people and get good feedback, but others may need a couple of days or so to get real feedback, to actually run a test, right? And as you said, it came from Google, or specifically Google Ventures, and it's a very clever idea. It's basically skilling up all the kind of other businesses that they were investing in, upskilling them to create the best of their startups that they possibly can. So it was another means of investment there. And what that means is, sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's services. In fact, one of the big examples in the sprint book is all about a hotel service, a room, basically a robot that comes to your hotel door and delivers you things. A little bit weird. Read the book. It's a great book. And so, the nature of the testing can definitely vary. It's always about exactly what are you trying to learn, which we'll get into a bit as well. Cool. I'll let you keep going. I'm just going to quick note with the questions. Try and put them in the Q&A window if you can. It's easier for us to keep track of them. I'll let you keep going.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty.
You might need to click.
Okay. Now, actually, that's a good question we had before about how many might you need
for release,
development, release, and things like that. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with the whole kind of build, measure, learn cycle. You can think of this as a delivery cycle. This is single loop development, and this is where you have repeated cycles where you're improving your product all the time. You're releasing, you're learning, you're optimizing, and so on. Now, I don't know about you, like particularly at Atlassian, there's a lot of this going on. We have a lot of products, and sometimes if that's your only method, it can really feel like you're a hamster in a wheel, and there's teams just doing this and doing this. Sometimes you need to
they're just optimizing. They're just incremental optimization.
That's right. Because any product that you put out into the market, you're basically setting your precedent. That's the precedent. From then on, that dominates anything that you then release. Every now and again, you need to go into discovery mode, and that's the kind of double loop development. You need to kind of get out of the building, find the unknown unknowns. You need to check in with customers to find out what problems do they actually have, not with your product or service, but in the work that they're trying to do. What hassles have they got? What hacks and workarounds are they having to do just to get by? It sounds really bleak, doesn't it? I don't mean it that way. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like
yes,
this is where great innovation comes from, when we get to observe the sort of weird things that people do to get.
And it's hard when you've got feature requests coming at you, support requests, like servers going down, all the stuff that happens on any live product. It's hard to get out of the.
It is very hard. And there's a great classic curve of product development. There's that growth, there's that product market part of a curve. And once you realize, we have product market fit, that's when you go into growth phase. And hopefully the numbers of customers go up and the revenue goes up. But sooner or later, to your point too, Scott, like things start plateauing off because all you're doing is small increments. The way to kick that curve back up again is with a discovery loop. And that's actually where design sprints fit. So you can think of design sprints as being like a bit of an incubator within your business. Yeah. Now, I thought I better clarify what design sprints are great for and not great for. There's some fairly kind of spicy opinions about this. I'm happy to take all that on. I've got a lot of opinions myself. I should say too, like I've been in a lot of design sprints myself. I've led and facilitated a lot. I've been in a lot of others that have said they're design sprints. Were they really? No, it was just some ideation, sure, but there was no testing and there was no anchoring it to product strategy or anything like that.
And why does that matter if someone's passing off their ideation session as a design sprint?
Yeah, I think it's like, I mean, it's a bit of a, I don't know, bad example, but you know when you might go to some countries and you might buy your sort of copy of a Fendi bag or like a what's a premium brand?
I bought Louis Vuitton shoes for $5 in Vietnam.
Boom, there you go. Yeah. So some people just do the Louis Vuitton knockoff shoes.
What are you trying to say?
I'm gonna go now. But now, point being, I think people will do some cool stuff and some useful stuff, and hop on the zeitgeist and say, yeah, we do design sprints, which might be groovy just for your team. But when other people find out that and other people have their assumptions, things can start to get a bit wobbly because they have different expectations. Yeah. So let's have a look at what they are great for. Look, they're certainly great for reducing the time it takes to get genuine user feedback on your ideas without having to go through that whole build and launch thing that we saw before. So you can actually shortcut that process and get feedback. That's awesome. And with that in mind, you can actually have reduced time to find product market fit. Very important. So some great time savings there. It means through the structured activities, particularly on the Monday, you get a better sense of the problem space. And in my book, that's gold, because that has compounded value in all other places of what teams do.
Yeah.
And in doing that, it increases your strategic thinking skills. That's something that is in higher and higher demand. Often something that MBAs can't teach. Whereas being in a design sprint and having to think through things from a empathic, user problem, user goal-based way, like that's a powerful thing. And my personal favorite is it reduces risk. It gives a business more confidence because you know what it's like, and maybe this happens in your business, Scott, I'm not sure, but there might be like tons of great ideas that your business could do, but you can't execute on all of them. And often, and it happens at Atlassian as well, like people get into analysis paralysis.
I was going to say the big one I see is the in place of, there's a risk here, so let's just spreadsheet it and discuss it till the cows come home.
Yeah.
Whereas really just running a design sprint or even just doing something is a much better solution. It actually saves money. Like just that thing that everyone's so worried about, if we just kind of went, let's just try and do it in a week.
Exactly,
in a structured way, would lead to a much better use of time and energy.
Absolutely, yeah. It really is a cost saver. Now, good to know what design sprints are not great for. They're certainly not a replacement for user research. Like you can't prototype your way to customer insight. Sorry. Likewise, they're not great when for that incremental stuff. When you already know if it's a usability issue or something, just go ahead and execute. So it's not about that. And on the other side of the scale, design sprints are horrible for the really big scope things, the intractable problems. So for example, would I use a design sprint to find an antidote to the coronavirus? No. You know, the way to do that has already been figured out. Scientists are on that.
Different process, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different process. But could I use a design sprint as a way to say, hey, how might we track where instances of infections are occurring faster? Yes, that's a great way to apply. Please don't use design sprints as a team building thing. A great way to make them even more dysfunctional is to throw them into a pressure cooker environment and expect them to come up with some great ideas. Won't go well.
It's interesting you mentioned that because in preparation for this, I was reading case studies on design sprints because I wanted to get some like meaty little like real world things. And one big one that came through in a case study is by the end of the design sprint, everyone it was like they diverged on their thinking, and basically it sounded like they just argued with each other as to what the best solution was, and they ended up in a worse off place than where they started.
I've had the same thing happen. I've never seen so much passive aggression in all my life. It's in fact, if I forget to say it later on, I'll say now. Particularly if it's a new team, or you know, the people you're getting into a sprint, if they've never worked together, do something else with them first.
Before you run the design sprint.
Before norm and form.
What is it? You had it right, yeah.
Get them
storming, norming, performing.
Yeah. Get them to do that first.
Yeah.
And then do a design sprint. Yeah.
No worries. And right. Just on that one, what do you do if you're partway through a design sprint, you're the facilitator, and you can see that it's just not sticking? What do you do?
That is a really good question. I think first of all, acknowledge it. First of all, like, be authentic and be real. And as a facilitator, it is our job to call the game, if you like, call out elephants in the room, and acknowledge it, and then put the power to the people in the room to say, okay, we're at a juncture. It's not going well, and get the group to articulate, why is it not going well? Is it we're not aligning? What are we not aligning on? Or we're not deciding? What's holding us back from deciding? It's a good, healthy thing to kind of just call time out and have a good, real conversation.
Just hit it head on.
Just
talk about it,
but in an empathetic way, because everyone's time is valuable.
Yeah.
There's actually nothing wrong with just stopping. Just point of design sprints is to reduce risk and confidence. And you can say, okay, what can we salvage from this? Like, what can we learn in the time we've got?
Yeah.
And I've had a time where that happened, and it was in that the Wednesday is the hard day where we have to make the tough decisions. And I had a time like that, and we're going to stop. But then through that, I guess, heart-to-heart conversation, people got re-energized. So I thought, oh, okay, it's not so bad. I suddenly realized what I'm anxious about. I'm anxious about how on earth we're going to build this. I don't actually have to worry about that right now. And I made a mistake, me as a facilitator, of anchoring too much on how we were going to build it. And it was the team, the group in the room that really said, hey, we know that we don't have to worry about that. We'll worry about execution later on, but we've got to test these ideas. And curiosity won the day.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've totally forgotten about that.
I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I should say there's a broad lot of stuff that you can apply design to, and design is there's so much more to design. Please don't ever think that what you see in design sprints is the sum total of design. It's really just Mick design for me. It's a formula, just like Burgess. Yeah. And another way to look at it is if you think about some various layers of design going on, and I'm sure there are more. As you can see in this diagram, yes, design sprints hit on user-centered value framing, invention and creativity, certainly design execution with the sketching and coming up with a prototype and testing. Maybe iteration if people decide to iterate on the same thing in another sprint. But honestly, it's a slice, and it doesn't get into user research and discovery, and it doesn't get into the underlying models and systems that are at play in any kind of product or service that we have to put out into the world. It's really, really important to get that. If you do design sprints, it's fantastic, as we've seen already, but it can't be the only thing you do. Yeah. Now, if we get into the world of facilitation now, it's good to think of facilitator as designer of the experience of having these people in a room, whether it's a design sprint or any kind of meeting, offsite, strategic discussion, you name it. The facilitator is the designer of the experience. And I've got some tips and tricks to show you here that really accentuate how you're going to own that. You own the space, you own that time. Because if you don't, all sorts of random things happen, right? And no one wants, and I'm sure you've been in meetings, I'm sure you've been at offsites where you think, what on earth is going on?
I love that picture.
It's actually, maybe it's a good warm-up actually at the beginning, like just to do this for a while, but then, point is, these sessions have to have sense and reason. Please don't think you can just pile a bunch of highly paid people into a room and hope for the best. That's the point. Yeah. All right, let's get into some pro tips, shall we?
Yeah.
These are battle-hardened, ladies and gentlemen. These are things that I often come back to, and I encourage others to. So, and as I mentioned too, these tips can apply to pretty much any workshop, any meeting. So let's get into it. Number one, get clear on why you're doing the design sprint in the first place. I know it sounds like really easy to say that, but in the whole hoi polloi of work, often the calendar wins the day. And you think, oh, it's coming up, we've got to get that, rather than giving yourself time to step back. Make sure whatever you're working on matters to the business. And that means cuddle up with the sponsor and business leaders. Find out what matters to them. What metrics are they trying to move? What risk are they worried about? Anchor into that, work with that. Expose assumptions. Make sure that they know it's not about creating a perfect solution. It's not replacing any existing design process where you create assets ready to give to developers. It's not about that. It's not innovation in a can. It can help a company be more innovative for sure, but it's not a silver bullet. And one trick I found that's really, really good, talk about the after party. If you're talking about a design sprint, whether it's with the people who are going to be in the room or whoever is sponsoring it and stakeholders, ask them, what do you look forward to after the design sprint? What do you want to do with what we find? That is a fantastic discussion to have.
Let's say I'm the sponsor of a design sprint, you come and said, hey, we're going to do a design sprint. My response is, no, why would you do that? We've already got our design process running. You know, our engineers have got their, every 2 weeks they're doing a sprint. Why can't they just, why are we going to design sprint this thing? Can't they just figure it out as part of the, what? Yeah, I'm curious about how you think about that.
I certainly say, and if I had a whiteboard, I'm grasping for a marker. I bleed whiteboard marker ink.
Okay.
You're probably getting that idea right now. But point is, like, so much of the work we do in improving a product, often it just gets the product to what customers already expect. What we want to do is give them something they don't expect.
Yeah.
And so in response, I'd say, and it's fantastic what we're doing. We want our customers to win. What does it mean for them to win? What does it mean for their customers to win?
And are we, do you think we're really fulfilling it in the best way we can or something?
Yeah. I appeal to that sense of curiosity as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Talk about the after party. Number 2, you got to hustle. I suck at hustling, I should say. It's a hard thing for me to do, but you've got to meet any reluctance that people have. You've got to meet that head on. Emphasize the advantages. Spend time to find out what's driving each of the people who you're going to have in the design sprint and various stakeholders. Find out what motivates them and talk to that. Address any reluctance. Often the biggest thing that comes up is the time cost. It's so scary for people to think, hang on, you mean I can only do one thing? And I find it really get me away from all the meetings. It's like a holiday.
Yeah.
It's like a holiday. And other people just go, oh, no, I could never do that. And I have to stop myself from being rude. I have to say, okay, so you'd rather just sit at your desk and delete emails all day and hang on Slack, would you?
All I can think of when you're saying it's like, I've got so many emails I've got to reply to.
Right.
So many unread Slack messages.
and that FOMO that people have, like, okay, I can be in a design sprint.
Yeah.
You know, think of the FOMO. Like, address that head on. And one way to help people is do a 1-day taster. Try doing a hackathon, if you like. And it's really just giving people a taste of saying, hey, here's a business we all know each other about it, and then work out a way that you want to solve this problem, and then make something. Doesn't matter whether it's an ad, a storyboard, some sketches of an app, doesn't matter, but make something and then pitch it. And you do that in a day, and people start to catch the fire. And they get the point.
Imagine what we could do in a week.
Imagine what we can do in a week. That's right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Now, just to illustrate this more, think of the decisions people have to make. Now, there's things that attract people to the decision of doing a design sprint. Will it help me in my goals? That's the rational part. And there's always an emotional element. Will it help me look smart, feel smart? Will this be good in my performance review, kind of thing? And is there proof? You know, can you tell me stories of other people like us that it's worked? You know, look, we're not Tesla. You know, we're not Airbnb, but are there companies like us that this has helped? Tell me about them. As I said, address the challenges head on. Are they worried about time or cost? Are they worried about the risk of failure? That's a very real thing. Yeah, and so then I hope they'll say, yes, we should totally do a design decision forces. If you go to bit.ly/decision forces, I've done an article that can step you through how to do this as a technique. There you go, a bit of a bonus.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, number 3, how are we going for time? We're good for time?
Yeah, another 5-10 minutes and we'll do a Q&A.
All right. As a facilitator, as I mentioned, you've got to own the space and the room and what happens. So be on it, not in it. There's a big thing I find people try to do both. They want to be a participant and facilitate. It's too hard. It's just too hard. It'll be a lot of pressure on you, and it won't be an optimal outcome. Yeah. Make sure everyone understands each other's responsibilities. So as a facilitator, you own the process, but they own the outcome. It's on them. And as a facilitator, play to your strengths. No one's perfect. I've learned this the hard way. I tried to do it all, running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I used to be horrible at being time being a facilitator, right?
Yeah.
So I would partner up with someone who played doing that. Yeah. Number 4, sometimes it's good to invest in a prep week, a preparation week. Give people a bit of a taste of what's in store. Help them set themselves up for success. And a bit like what you said before, Scott, if something is happening throughout the sprint where it's uncomfortable, address that. But it's good at the beginning to help people know that there are times when they're going to feel uncomfortable. It is an uncomfortable pressure cooker environment, particularly the drawing part, particularly the pitching ideas and then having to decide on ideas. And it's not bad to help people do that earlier in a bit of a safe space first.
Would you, it seems to me it's kind of the role of the facilitator almost to not take opinions on people's ideas and to maybe let the others. I think my wife's just done some training to do ethics courses with kindergarten kids at the moment, and she was telling me one of the techniques that's really coming to mind now is to say, if a child who is in kindergarten, they're probably going to say something pretty ridiculous. The sky is not red. You can, or like, that's ridiculous. We would never do that to a person. You say, oh, okay. And why do you think, oh, that's an interesting idea. Like, you kind of pull it out. I think, is that the role of the facilitator? When you say you're trying not to engage with like, no, Scott, that's a dumb idea. Have that debate and
absolutely
you mediate the debate.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's actually something that can and does happen, where people do start to critique each other's ideas. It's very easy for them to slip into their own opinions. As a facilitator, you can then remind them that, hey, the yardstick for prioritizing these ideas is the problem, is the goal. What's the best idea that executes on that goal? Not the easiest, but the best.
Yeah.
As a facilitator, a lot of what I do is just remind people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good call. It's a good call out. Number 5. A quick thing on keeping up energy and fun. I'm a big fan of icebreakers and brain oilers. Brain oilers, what's the difference, Ben? You might be thinking. Well, please don't do trust falls, but just simple things that take 5 minutes at the beginning of a day or straight after lunch to say, hey, let's all go around the table and say, what's our most embarrassing moment? What was the first album we bought? Something fun like that, something quick. Brain oilers help get people's heads into the right space, the right mindset. If I may, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
I was tidying out my office. This is, ladies and gentlemen.
Did you eat the spam in there?
Yes, I did. On the barbecue.
We have it here.
This relates to one of the brain oilers, which is really good at stimulating creativity in people.
Yeah.
And it's the third one down there. Think of as many alternate uses for any particular object that might be around.
Doomsday prepping.
That's right. That's right. And everyone, it's really fast and loose and fun. And you just say an alternate use. And it's got to be cool. I got to be smart. I've got to come out with a bit. Yeah. What would you do with this, Scott?
The can with everything going on. So I would find a way to reseal it and store some goods in it that might come in handy later on.
Okay. Nice.
Hey, are you all with us? We're free. Hey everyone, we've just come back. Are you all with us? I'm just trying to see the chat. Are we back? Yep. Okay.
Right.
Can you hear us okay?
Let's blame the spam can. Enough of the spam can. Who brought that anyway? All right.
Get in the way of our Wi-Fi.
Let's continue, shall we? Last one, encourage decisions and closure. Exercise. Have you ever done a hopes and fears exercise?
I have, yeah.
Really effective. Just ask people, what do you hope for? What are you anxious about? And as a group, what can we do to make sure that the hopes happen and the fears don't? And that becomes a really nice social contract, if you like. Yeah. The other thing I'll say on this slide too is expect to capture a lot of stuff and work out ahead of time how you're going to capture all of that, because that's valuable. Particularly if you do more and more design sprints, you'll build up this great library of knowledge. So it's good to work out with your team and your systems how to do that.
And how do you, I guess that's one way to get people vulnerable. There's a question here really relevant. How do you get people to be vulnerable? I suppose that's one of the best exercises I've been involved in to do it.
Yeah. Number one, I would say as a facilitator, set the tone and mood and be vulnerable yourself first.
Yep.
And in that way, you're showing that it's okay. Even to the point where you can say, make a mistake. Maybe you got something wrong on the agenda and admit it, have a laugh, and that helps. And those fast, light, easy kind of trust-building icebreaker questions help people to be vulnerable as well. Oh, another good one too, particularly when it comes to ideas and not wanting to look dumb. Before everyone starts sketching, get everyone to just draw the worst face they possibly can or the worst chair they possibly can. Like, make it look dumb. And as a facilitator, do it yourself as well. That's that opens up people.
I feel like with your sketching abilities, you'd probably end up intimidating everyone. Do you have to like draw with your left hand or something, or your foot?
Pretty much. No. Look, I'm never going to.
You don't look while you.
Yeah.
Hey, so that's kind of. I'll just time. We might jump into. Do you want to give us the 10 in a quick kind of 3-minute abridged version?
I can.
Is that yeah?
Should we go through real quick there?
Yeah.
So I won't expand on these. Number one, don't start without the right inputs, and make sure you have all the right inputs first. Make sure you have a dedicated space.
There's actually a question on this one, so I'll just someone's how much prep do you have to do before?
Sorry to say.
Because it's actually a multi-week exercise, isn't it? A lot of prep work to get everyone ready, get the right time, get all the right research, get the customer data that you need.
There's a bit of a going joke I've got with a couple of coaching friends. It takes longer to prep a sprint than to do the sprint. And there's times where you prep it and then you realize that you've kind of learned enough and you don't need to do the sprint after all. And then you have a laugh. But like any kind of project planning, the planning you do is far more important than the plan. Very important. Yeah.
Cool. And next one being.
All right. Being too ambitious, that's a great way to make your design sprint fail. And something I've always noticed, particularly in technology companies, maybe Atlassian, is trying to do a hi-fi prototype, and they go too big into trying to do a hi-fi prototype. and worry too much about that rather than
you're in writing code,
like using our design library and using real code.
yeah.
Like the prototype's going to be throwaway. You don't have to keep it. And that's kind of anathema to a lot of designers and developers who think, oh, it's so wasteful, you know, we don't need waste, but that's not what this is about.
Don't follow the brand design guidelines.
Don't worry
about any coding standards. Don't reuse anything, all that. Yep.
You don't need it, yeah. This is a big one. It'll fail if you skip on things like testing. People are obsessed, ladies and gentlemen, with making sprints, you know, like 4 days or no, 2 days. Oh, we did a sprint in 2 days, you know, wrong. Anything that's that much stripped down, too much value has come out. And you know it because they're not more confident in what they're going to do now, and they haven't learnt much. Yeah. And another big one is not having a decision maker in the room and relying on the group to decide. Oh, no, we don't need the decision maker, or the decision maker is saying, oh, look, I'll be there on the Monday and the Friday, that's all. Won't work. The last one real quick is all of your prototypes.
I got to appease everyone. Don't offend anyone.
Yeah. Customers won't know what to make of it, and you know what to make of the results. Yeah.
Okay. We might through. Yeah. I actually do want to.
Yeah.
And the thing during the questions is varying this up. You've kind of said, like, if you're going to compress it, beware. Maybe sometimes you might need to vary it up.
Definitely.
To be able to fit in with people's schedules, or I'm just really curious about you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is like the design sprint god's going to come to your house and, you know, is Jake Knapp going to come to your house and like,
how do you?
Yeah.
Look, just bearing the sort of underskirts of Atlassian here. I'm on, I did a design sprint recently. It was 2 weeks, and we do them over 2 weeks. Why? Because it's impossible to get people's time as a dedicated week. Doing it 2 weeks, it just takes the pressure off. Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all.
Okay.
Okay. I'd also consider doing co-design with customers. Like you're going to have customers in. Are we still on? Testing on the Friday anyway. So you might want to consider having the customers actually in on the Monday and the Tuesday. In other words, the beginning, and hear from them what they think the problem is. Get them sketching. I've had extraordinary results from co-designing with customers, not just for customers. Yeah.
That one's kind of seems so essential to me just getting the customer in the room.
Yeah.
Too often it's a proxy or something, but having a real person is
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. Please don't rely on just getting an internal subject matter expert in as a proxy for the customer.
Yeah.
It might be scary for some companies.
Yeah.
To reach out and get real customers in the building, but it's well and truly worth it. And the last thing I should say too is I've had a lot of design sprints not go well because the problem wasn't formed up well enough.
Okay.
Invest a day or two in a problem framing workshop beforehand. And the benefit of that is you can actually then build up a backlog of problems because in a way they're business cases that the business can then reach into when relevant.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're just going to, I'm just going to jump forward in conscious of time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Ben. We're going to do Q&A in a second, but I just want to give a big thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll leave this up while we jump into, I'll leave this up while we jump in. So Q&A, what have we got on the, we've answered the outside the room. Any questions, throw them through now and we'll try and get to them. So we've answered outside the room research. You got to get done beforehand. You're saying you really want to focus your effort there, is what you were saying earlier from Eli.
Yeah, definitely.
I love this one of, do you need a designer and how do you go with prototyping? You touched on that with Atlassian going too hi-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you need a designer in the room? Do you need a coder? Can you do it without one?
I'd say definitely have a designer in the room because they'll do a pretty good job at translating your words and sketches into something that is neater and kind of has a lot of the standard user interface discipline and guidelines baked into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lessons that designers have learned and shortcuts that they'll do it faster and to better quality. Yeah. As to coders, probably don't even need coding. Yeah, I know that in realization, it really depends on what problem you're doing.
You're trying to solve, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got another one up here about prototyping. Do you use it?
Yes. If by prototyping you mean, can I use some kind of prototyping framework? Absolutely. We use something internally called Bowtie in Atlassian, and it's a whole lot of throwaway HTML components, really, and it's quite easy for designers and developers to sort of stitch these bits of code together, and it's got a whole lot of style attached to it, so it's quite easy to ape an Atlassian looking product.
Yeah.
And that's a great asset to have. Yeah. I should say too, neat sketches and a simple prototype basically communicate the same thing when it comes to this level of testing. Because for this testing and design sprints, you really just want to test, like, does the idea even have legs? Is it speaking the customer's language? Does it resonate with their mental model? You're not testing the usability of something, you're testing the usefulness. Yeah.
Let's just have a look through here.
There's one about remote. Remote.
Oh, yeah, down the bottom.
What do we do about remote? Oh, this is a bugbear of mine. I'm going to be honest. I actually wonder if it's important enough to the business, fly the people in. It's such a better outcome if you have people in the room. That might not be a popular thing to say, but I always try to have the people in the room. That said, some ways to facilitate things remotely. If you're going to have people remote, it means then that all your assets need to be digital. You're going to need everyone, no matter where they are, using the same digital space, like Mural or Miro, M-I-R-O.
Not Slack.
You're going to need Slack for day-to-day communication, but as far as mapping a problem space, journey mapping,
stuff to do.
Showcasing ideas as a gallery, you're going to need it all in Mural. And you're going to have to plan for that. And if you have several people in another room doing remote, you probably need a facilitator on that end as well. If they're across different time zones, that can actually work quite nicely because they might be prototyping while you're asleep, which is good.
Yeah.
It just takes an extra layer of planning. Yeah.
And that's great. Awesome. We've got one last question I think we're going to have to take, and the other ones we might do offline. Or how do you know when you have a solid problem statement?
Oh, great one. When it inspires more action than questions. In other words, if you read a problem statement or someone says it and you're going,
why aren't we fixing that?
I don't understand. And it's got to be clear. And by clear, I don't mean brief. I think sometimes people confuse clarity with brevity. They think a problem statement has to be like, I don't know, 5 words or something. Make it meaningful. I'm a big fan of formats that go something like this. A user type, has this goal in mind. To do that, she needs to do a bunch of tasks. She can't do that because there's this problem in the way and it has this impact on her. That's unacceptable because of an urgency of that impact or the severity of that impact. That is a good problem statement when it's got that meaty detail in it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Goal, task, impact, and who is having that problem.
Awesome. I think we're going to have to pause it there because we're 1 minute to the end.
Okay.
Just want to say a big thank you to everyone for coming along. Big thank you to Ben.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Scott.
If you obviously check out Ben's book, if you do want to learn more, there's a little link there that will come out in email as well. You can hit me up for a conversation and I can help you. I can put you in touch with people that can help you. But a big thank you. Look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Thanks so much again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.